Philippines today. Our globalized world is a most competitive world, and the challenge is for Philippine companies to stand out, be noticed, and to make their marks in the market. Corporate leaders must be obsessed with improving earnings and the returns to shareholders, producing high-quality products and services, recruiting, keeping, and satisfying its workforce, and today, corporate social responsibility and protecting the environment. As such, one spends endless hours at work, giving up most evenings and weekends in order to excel in this challenging environment. Unfortunately, on top of this already competitive and challenging landscape, we have much more with which to contend. Many of these are small, seemingly inconsequential things like rush hour traffic, U-turns and rerouting, and simply bad roads. Just getting to the airport is a major challenge. And the squalor and the open sewers posing as rivers that one sees along the way is disheartening. Moreover, our electricity, long-distance phone call rates, and food costs are among the highest in the region. Has anyone here tried to set up a business? Getting the SEC registration, the mayors, the barangays, fire and building permits, a tax identification number, registering with DOLE, SSS, PhilHealth, are major exercises requiring quite a significant amount of time and money. While I recognize that these processes may have recently improved, in the countries of our competitors, one can register a company online for a pittance. Inevitably, while trying to build a globally competitive Philippine company, people will offer you some advice. You know, they will say, your products are not competitive because you insist on paying the VAT. No one else does. And that is why your market share is so small. Why pay? Our government is so corrupt. Taxes just end up being stolen. And mind you, if you do pay your taxes correctly, you will be subject to letters of assessment and audits. Are you importers? Why go through customs when you can smuggle? If you do choose to pay your duties, you will never be able to compete against smuggled goods. You want your mining claims approved quickly? I know someone who can easily facilitate those approvals with just a small facilitation fee. You're bogged down with legal problems impeding your projects. That can be very easily solved if you're willing to play ball. You want to bid for a major project? Why risk losing when you can make arrangements with the others and just rig the bid? In this country, you will be told if you want to get ahead, you have to play smart. Anyway, if you are stupid enough to get caught, you can always use your wealth and power to get away with it, despite all the witnesses in the world. These are what frustrate us day in and day out. Inadequate infrastructure, a disabling and confusing environment of rules and regulations, policies and procedures, a non-level playing field with the field tilted in favor of those who break the rules, broad and deep corruption, and a weak justice system. Allow me to speak of two particularly critical concerns with which I am personally most troubled: the dismal state of our public school system and the seemingly endemic and unstoppable corruption that plagues this country. At present, there are about 17 million school children in the public system. While this may seem like a lot, let's look at the inverse figures. 1 in 10 Filipinos, or 6.8 million, has never gone to school. 1 in 6 Filipinos, or 9.6 million, is functionally illiterate. 1 in 3 children, or youth, 11.6 million, is not in school. One of the main problems is retention or keeping our kids in school. The largest chunk of elementary dropouts leaves before grade 4. The main reason for this is hunger. The children, due to malnutrition, are simply not strong enough to attend school or concentrate on their classes. Surprisingly, a substantial number of students also drop out because of a lack of interest, in part brought on by the miserable state of their schooling, the shortage of classrooms and textbooks, and the low-quality teachers. As a result, scores of our children and youth abandon their education and join the ranks of the uneducated and functionally illiterate. However, for those who stay in school, their circumstances, sadly, are not necessarily better, nor their futures necessarily brighter. In the 2007 National Achievement Tests, or NATs, the average score among public elementary school students was 60%. 75% is the passing score. In a 2004-2005 oral reading test, only 23% of grade 5 students and 23% of grade 6 students were independent readers or read with comprehension at their appropriate age level in either Filipino or English. The implications of these figures for the nation become obvious and disheartening when put side by side with the data on poverty. The incidence of poverty among those without an education is 56.8%. Among those with some elementary undergraduate education, the incidence is 37.7%. And among those who finished elementary, the incidence of poverty is 17.9%. Clearly, if we are to address poverty, we must educate our people. A 2001 study showed that an additional year of schooling increases individual wages by 6.5% to 9%. It is against this backdrop that recently a number of very concerned chief executive officers banded together and organized PBED, Philippine Business for Education. Our goal is clear. Together with education experts, those more knowledgeable in education than us CEOs, to advocate policy and institutional reforms needed to make the Philippine education system effective and efficient, universal and inclusive. Our key advocacies are competency-based standards in the training, hiring, and promotions of teachers, a shift to a 12-year plus preschool basic education cycle, and more funding for education and more efficient use of these funds. Seeing the importance of reforming our basic education, institutions such as De La Salle, Far Eastern University, and Miriam College have joined PBED. We would be extremely fortunate and pleased to have the University of the Philippines as one of our partners and members. The second problem I wish to address is the problem of corruption. Two international surveys rate the Philippines quite poorly in terms of corruption. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst rating, the Philippines rated at 2.5 in Transparency International's 2007 Corruption Perception Index, a further deterioration from 3.6 in 1999, and ranked as 131st out of 180 countries. According to the Political and Economic Risk Consultancy ranking, the Philippines was ranked number 1 in Asia in 2007 and 2008, surpassing Indonesia as the region's most corrupt country. The impact of widespread corruption is well known to all of us. It dissipates our already meager resources, reducing expenditures on basic needs such as education, health, and infrastructure. Moreover, it discourages investments as invested capital is dissipated due to leakages. The Office of the Ombudsman itself estimates that some $48 billion has been lost to corruption in the 20-year period ending in the year 2000. By the way, you may be interested to know that studies estimate that the gaps in education, all the gaps in education, teachers, classrooms, textbooks, and classrooms, can be filled for only 22 billion pesos. But more than its effect on our material capabilities, prevalent corruption destroys the spirit, deepening frustration and cynicism as misbehavior and unethical conduct are rewarded. In the 2007 Social Weather Station Survey of Enterprises on Corruption, 50% opined that corruption is part of the way government works, while 61% thought that there was a lot of corruption in the public sector. Corruption, the abysmal public school system, overpopulation, unabated pollution, the weak judiciary, bickering politicians, the list goes on and on. How does one react to these overwhelming problems? It is no wonder that many choose to leave our shores for other countries. However, it is in the face of these seemingly insurmountable troubles that we precisely forget that we are business people, academics or politicians, or Lasalians, scholars ng bayans or Ateneans, and remember that we are all Filipinos. Filipinos who must dare to see the way things could be and conclude, why not? How have we in the business community responded? As already mentioned, recently a number of very concerned chief executive officers banded together and organized Philippine Business for Education. Prior to this, in 2004, the Coalition Against Corruption, a multi-sectoral coalition, was organized. And long before that, in 1992, the Philippine Business for the Environment was formed, and even much earlier, Philippine Business for Social Progress. Why are we spending time and resources on these actions? For while Friedman believes the business of business is business, another school of thought argues that beyond the fundamental roles of the business sector, corporations must also do their part to address the critical needs of society, particularly because so much of a nation's resources are in our hands. However, beyond just projects and programs, business is called to use its position and influence to shape the larger environment in which it exists, because the roots of many of the ills besetting us are found in the very social and policy structures that make up our nation. What are we therefore asking of the National University? My view is that because we are all citizens of our country, because we are blessed with intelligence and superior education, because we understand the issues and hold views on what is best for our country and our countrymen, because we are in positions of influence and leadership and people look to us for guidance, because our views matter and carry weight and policymakers listen to us, and because we have every right to love our country and to do all we can to make this the country we would like it to be. For all these reasons, we should be involved. Furthermore, citizenship must go beyond individuals and extend to our institutions. All our organizations, not just NGOs and foundations, are obligated to practice social responsibility. Businesses, media organizations, Rotary clubs, and yes, universities. This is most especially true of organizations with a plethora of resources, whether material or intellectual, at their command. Simply put, the University of the Philippines, with all its brains and capabilities, should be put in service of the country, specifically to address our basic ills, to make every Filipino's life better. How do I propose UP fulfill this responsibility? First, it must provide intellectual leadership. So much of the discussions on what our country needs has been fraught with emotion and colored by political agendas.